Okay, so theoretically we're doing Mishlei 21:12, but I was listening to a shir from Rabbi Chait on Asarah B'Teves, and he mentioned the halacha and the Rambam about how not on the communal fasts that are instituted in the calendar, but on like the fasts on like Saros, then they have the whole procedure, and part of the procedure was that they would send out like chachamim and zakenim and like basically like facilitate communal tshuva type of introspection on an individual level, and then and also give like divrei musar and tochacha and stuff. And then Rebbe said, he said in passing, he said, so if you're going to give a shir on Asarah B'Teves, then you should like talk about that stuff or something like that, And so, and this is like the first year in memory. Like I can't remember another year where I'm not actually scheduled to give an Asarah B'Teves shir. So I was yotze by like, I made a Stoic Jew podcast this morning about it. So like I'm yotze about that. But if you wanted to hear a thought I had on the way over, then it would be appropriate. Is that okay? Yeah. So I was thinking that, so I've given shirim before on how the what do you call you're supposed to give tzedakah on all fast days. You're supposed to give tzedakah in general, but on all fast days it's appropriate. But I've given a lot of shirim on several shirim on how on Asarah B'Teves, then it's most appropriate to give to the poor who are hungry, because the siege of Yerushalayim resulted in mass death by starvation. So like thematically reflecting on the event directly leads you to the idea of like people starving, So I encourage everyone to give tzedakah to, again, whoever you want, but like, in yeshiva, we tend to give to Yad Yeshaya that supports the families who are local, who don't, who can't afford food. So then I was thinking, when I used to say this to my high school students, then they would often say stuff like, I'm supported by my parents, so like I don't have my own money to like give for tzedakah, And I was thinking on the way over, I was just thinking about that reasoning, and I was thinking like how many times do these kids, and these were high schoolers, how many times do these kids go out to a movie or like buy snacks for themselves or wherever, and they don't ask them, they don't say like, oh, this is my parents' money, I have to ask them before I spend it on this, Like something strikes me about there being a double standard here, a double standard where it's a presumed thing that my taivas, I can use my money for my taivas, but I can't use my money for tzedakah. Now, I'm not, obviously there are limits to this in the sense of like, you're not going to give away $1,000 from your parents' money, like for tzedakah, but the very fact that they automatically, like, and it wasn't just like a 1 or 2 person thing. Like I've heard this a lot from high schoolers, just an automatic thing of like it's my parents' money. Like I can't give tzedakah, and then like they go and just like buy stuff for themselves. That is the type of thing that needs to be examined when it comes to doing teshuva on matters of chesed, tzedakah, and mishpat, of like the people employ reasoning based on double standards or false premises, like without even being aware of it. And like another example of this is like, aniyim are chayav to give tzedakah, so like I feel like there's another thing that people say, I don't have enough money to give tzedakah, which is just, the Torah is mechayev aniyim to give tzedakah, like, and yeah, you have to do it rationally. You have to like look into your finances and stuff and like keep the halachos. But I don't know, it was just, I was just thinking about those two obstacles on the way here. And obviously everyone has their own like, relationship to tzedakah, but I just want to share those thoughts because that's what I was thinking of on the way here. So yeah. Okay. Pass that down.
I don't have enough money.
Yeah.
It seems to me like maybe it's like, because I don't, like, this is not coming from my money. I'm not like, I'm not like the one who'd actually like to like doing the tzedakah. Like, I think that might be like what
perhaps.
Yeah. But like,
yeah. It's funny because I think in terms of this, I appreciate being Malamed Zechus on them. I think here, for our own sake, we should be Malamed Chova in order to look at ourselves with a more critical eye, like, not that you're not doing that. I'm just saying like, yeah, it could be Malamed Zechus, but like, don't let that negate the message.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Yotze now. Okay, all right. So Maskil Tzadik Lebeis Rasha Mesalech Rashayim Lara 21:12. So the Tzadik either comprehends / gazes at / brings success to the house of the Rasha. Misalef, he distorts, corrupts, bends, diverts Rashayim for or to evil or harm. Get a lot of slashes here. Hold on. Harm. Yeah, badness. Yeah. Okay, fine. So we asked several questions. What does maskil mean? How does it apply to the house? If it's success, which seems difficult at first, then does that mean he helps them do tshuva? And if it's not tshuva, then why would he make the Rasha succeed? That would seem to result in harm. And if it means to comprehend, then either that's obvious that the tzaddik has to comprehend the Rasha, of course, or what is he doing comprehending the house of the Rasha? Like, he shouldn't be hanging around there, and like either way, what method is he using or what gives the tzaddik special insight? 2, what is the base Rasha? How can you have a base Rasha if they're very self-interested? What would be the nature of their relationship to each other? And also just what are the parameters of the pasuk? Is it like literally a household? Is it like a dynasty? Is it a closed system? Who is the group of Rashayim in the second half as distinct from the first half, or is it just synonyms for groups of Rashayim? And is this Rashayim in general, or are we talking about specific groups? 4, what's the tzaddik doing with the house of the Rasha? Why is he engaging the Rasha in this manner? Why not just avoid him? 5, what does Misalef mean? How does he corrupt him, or whatever that means? What does Lara mean? Harm, evil, whatever. Is it objective? Is it in the Rasha's eyes he's corrupting him for harm, but that could be, let's say, doing tshuva in an objective framework? What's the relationship between the two halves? Who's the audience, and what's the practical application? So yesterday I gave a pshat that because the Rasha is destined to self-destruct, especially if he's haughty and deluded by his own success, then sometimes the tzaddik will get ahead of the curve and push the Rasha towards success to bring about his downfall, like Esther did in the Beis Haman. I thought of another similar approach, but not with maskil as bring success, but as comprehends, okay, which is like this, that many times the Rasha will look unstoppable because the Rasha does cross boundaries and do things that are just like brazen. There's a certain like azus of the Rasha, of just like imposing his will on reality that gets results. And it looks like the Rasha is unstoppable, but it could be that we said bias is a Mishlei like a code word for like system. So because the tzaddik can understand the Rasha from a systemic standpoint and see what the Rasha's relationship is with his ecosystem and how he is dependent on his cronies and on propaganda and on lies and on bravado and on like, self-delusion, the tzaddik has a special perception into the fungal network of the Rasha, and that he can use to divert the Rasha to his own harm. So I'm taking the pasuk as the same way in terms of he'll bring about the destruction of the Rasha, but I'm saying not through bringing success, but through understanding how the Rasha is dependent on his system, which the Rasha will be blind to, because the Rasha does not want to view himself as dependent on anything. And by the tzaddik doing that, then he can bring about the Rasha's downfall. Okay, so shall we look at Mefarshim, unless anyone else had any ideas since yesterday? Okay, let's go for it. Let's start with let's do our usual pecking order here. Metzudas David, Rabbeinu Yonah, Meiri, and then we'll go from there. Metzudas David said, ooh, a long Metzudas David, look at that. Maskil Tzadik, Kasher Hatzadik Omed Bebeis Rasha, when the Tzadik stands in the house of the Rasha, Hatzadik Hazeh Matzliach Beso Shel HaRasha. That's interesting. The Tzadik will bring success to the house of the Rasha. Ki Nisbarech Biglolo. The Rasha will be blessed on account of him. Now, pause here. I don't think you need to say that this is through Hashgacha Pratis, even though that could also be true. I think it's just like, Yosef is going to manage Potiphar's household in a very, very, effective way. And so things will work out for the Rasha there, V'hi siba l'salef es harashayim lasos ra. This is a cause of, how did Metzudas David said, to bend, right? Misalef is ma'akim. To incline the Rasha to do evil, ki yachshov ba'avuro nisbarach beso. So, because the Rasha will think it's on his account that the house is blessed, umasav tovim be'nei Hashem, and his actions are good in the eyes of Hashem. Whoa. Okay, so So who does this sound like it's talking to? Really? I mean, if Rishonim listened, then this could be talking to the Rasha. I read this as talking to the Tzadik.
Oh, but if the Tzadik brings success to the Rasha, then that'll reinforce that'll entrench him in the place.
Right. Meaning you should be aware, if you are a Tzadik in a base Rasha, and I think it's interesting how the Metzudas David, not I would expect him to do this, he's not passing judgment on why the Tzadik is in the Rasha's house, right? This happens. Like, Daniel gets captured by Nebuchadnezzar and is recruited to be one of his advisors. Like that, stuff like that happens, right? So, but what's going to happen is, and this did happen. I mean, he did bring success to Nebuchadnezzar, and it made Nebuchadnezzar think that he was it reinforced his decision to try to do bad stuff by making his malchus last forever. That's just the first example that comes to mind. But in a more contemporary setting, you might have a boss who, you might be a tzaddik, you might have an employer who's a Rasha, and because you're doing your job, it'll bring success to the entire base Rasha, and then that's going to make him more emboldened to continue with his rishus. So the question is, if you're a tzaddik in that position, what should you do? What's the practical application? Do you see why I'm saying it's not addressing the Rasha? Yeah, right. So the tzaddik's caught. What is he supposed to do? What Metzudas David doesn't spell out, the implications.
Seems like doesn't mean it's not good to do?
Say it again.
Does it still, even given what he says, does it still mean it's not a good move?
I don't know. I don't even know. That's, I think, open to interpretation.
It seems like maybe what the Tzadik could do is mitigate, how successful he's making the base Rasha.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say in your example with the job,
Yeah.
If a Tzadik does what he would normally do, then he's gonna do really well.
Right.
And then that's gonna it's gonna be like, oh wow, this department's doing really well, and then the boss gets rewarded.
Right.
But if he intentionally does worse than he otherwise would, but it's not a big success.
Right.
Then he can I say remove this positive reinforcement for the Rasha without tempering his success too much.
Okay, so I like your approach. I'm actually going to take it one step more universal, I think, which is that the main advice, I think, for the tzaddik is to be aware of this phenomenon, and the tzaddik is not used to having to think about his actions facilitating rishus, or enabling rishus is the better term, So, because in a normal system, when the tzaddik does good for people, then it benefits everybody, and then the system, there's a greater net good in the system. But when you have a Rasha who's parasitically, who said the parasite thing yesterday? What? Me?
Yeah.
Wasn't Ariel? It wasn't okay.
No, he's an invasive species. That was
Oh, invasive species. Okay, yeah. I really like that muscle of the parasite. It really is good, because that's exactly how the Rasha functions. So when he's, and again, it's a parasite because he takes over the whole system, and just without any regard to the well-being of the components, just leeches off the benefit, So the tzaddik is not used to the good that he puts into the system being diverted to bad ends. So what he should do is think about not just, blindly facilitating the success of the system. He has to think, what is the Rasha going to do if he thinks that the success is a result of him? And then the tzaddik can do the types of things that you're saying, like moderating his own success, or maybe it might mean making it clear that I'll give an example, right? Let's say hypothetically here, right? Let's say you are a president and the pandemic breaks out, and you have to make certain decisions about what to do, and you have advisors who do understand systems, whether economic systems, medical systems, or whatever. So they should be aware that if they make certain recommendations in line with their tzidkus, if it results in poll numbers going up for the Rasha, So then that might embolden the Rasha to implement certain other policies that give him more popularity. In other words, it might have nothing to do with like the good that you're actually doing. It's just anything that will be perceived by the Rasha as I am on the right track and I am destined for success. Like you got to be aware of doing that. And then maybe like, it could be a matter of changing the message of like, making it clear to the public or to the surrounding circle that this success is not coming from the Rasha, it's coming from something else, or sabotaging yourself or something like that, or putting in additional like checks and balances to make sure that the Rasha can't overstep his bounds. Yeah, like let's say if you're working for a tyrant, or someone who's like rising to become an autocrat, it's only a matter of time before they try to intervene and change the constitution or whatever. I mean, like this happens in like African, or European autocracies, right? So maybe if you're a tzaddik and you are doing something to bring success to the country in terms of, let's say, like stability, which could make it easier for the Rasha to seize power, maybe what you should also do is make sure that you create checks and protections around vulnerable areas of abuse of constitutional powers, stuff like that. So I think that would be the general message here of like mitigate it as much as possible, and there are many different ways you can mitigate it. Yeah, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like that you should look at like which Rishonim might be like benefiting from the good that you're doing.
Yeah.
And then find ways to make sure that
Yeah. So it does end. So just to read the pasuk though, the Tzadik brings success. When a Tzadik brings success to the house of the Rasha, it will corrupt the Rashaim towards evil, right? And I think that's a very clean read of the pasuk. Like we don't have to play any games here of like, of saying, oh, it's subjective. It's straight up. He's gonna do that. And you can also get the little Mishlei pun of the Tzadik has to be smart in a base Rasha. That's not the pshat, but like maskil, like why doesn't it just say like, use the word like hatzlacha, like to be, like, I don't know how I would phrase it grammatically, but why does it use this maskil thing? So you get a double meaning here. Okay, did you say you wanted to do Rabbeinu Yonah? Okay, so let's do Rabbeinu Yonah. Not because you wanted to, but I just wanted to make sure that I remember that correctly. Okay, maskil tzadik lebeis Rasha. Rabim yechashvu ki hatzadik lo yavin midos hara. Oh, this. Okay, I remember this. Someone asked about this yesterday. All right, we'll see. Rabim yechashvu ki hatzadik lo yavin midos harasha v'toanosav utava'av. Many people think that the tzaddik does not understand the midos of the Rasha, or his toanos here, I think is like in the sense of schemes. I don't know what the literal translation is. I don't think it means complaints. Utava'av, and his natures. Mipnei shehim behevech mitav hatzadik, because they're the opposite of the nature of the tzaddik. That's not true. Tzaddik the base Rasha, but the tzaddik comprehends the house of the Rasha, and he understands his methods of duplicity, umazimas libo, and his scheming heart, mind, the sof kavanasa, and his ultimate intent. Chazal say Shema Yomru Haramayin in Shema Yomru Haramayin in Talmid Chacham Bekim B'Masei Edenu. Maybe the I was going to say Decepticons. That's not the word. The deceivers. The deceivers will say that Talmidei Chachamim are not knowledgeable, not experts in the work of our hands. Okay, and I guess he's saying Chazal are saying that that's really a false assumption. Misalef Rishayim Lara. So he corrupts the Rashaim for evil. Because the tzaddik understands the ultimate intent of the Rashaim, umakir es tivam, and recognizes their nature. Misalif umate osam umachriim, he will corrupt and incline them and tilt them, vidan osam, and judge them l'kafchova, judge them unfavorably, like be suspicious. In their actions and in their words, because a person should not judge another should only judge a person if the majority of his actions and the root of his intentions are in a good manner. Yeah. Okay. So first thing he says here is the premise, right? Is that don't think that the tzaddik is like I think that isn't there a Yiddish? Okay, I don't know Yiddish terms. I've only picked this up from like people of the Yiddish speaking generation. Anyone know what the term edel means? I've heard. Let me.
It's like sweet nature.
Yeah, right. Like I hear. I'll tell you where I heard this. This is like a common term when describing like applicants for seminary, like that people want, like they use this as like when people are applying to Shadal as a high school or like applying to seminary, oh, she's so edel, and there's like, I think there's like a connotation of like good, but like innocent of like the evils of the world in terms of like not even being able to comprehend them. Our tzaddikim are not like that. Our tzaddikim like understand psychology and understand deception and like are suspicious where suspicion is warranted. And I think it sounds like that's what the Rabbeinu Yonah is trying to like bring out here, right? So just to mention when I said, oh, someone asked about Yitzchak yesterday, right? Like Yitzchak didn't see what was going on with Esav. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that I remember when I first read this Rabbeinu Yonah many many years ago. Then I had that question, how Rabbeinu Yonah would explain that, and I never got an answer. So if anyone has an answer, I mean, I gave a partial answer yesterday that Esau, if you have a manipulator who's good enough, like then he can blind. Well, I didn't mean to. Sorry, he can trick. He can trick even a chacham. But it still is a question to me. Like you would think Yitzchak would have, known, unless I was a hate on his part. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, given that premise,
And then I think
yeah,
like just because the Tzadik like understands how how it's trying to work doesn't mean that they're never going to get fooled by it.
correct, right, yeah. But this seems like he got fooled over the course of a long period of time. Yeah.
Is the idea that Tzadik is supposed to be able to tell immediately or just
No, not immediately.
Okay, in that case, the call only lasts for like several minutes.
No, it lasted his whole teenage years.
Yaakov's calling of Yitzchak.
According to Chazal, right? I mean, no, not Yaakov. We're talking about Esav, right? That he thought that Esav was really good and like he deserved. I mean, according to some,
Okay,
yeah.
I guess that's why-
Yeah, not Yaakov. Yeah.
I guess that's why I go for joking in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad we clarified in case anyone else was only half listening. Okay, so then he says another thing. He dispels another notion, which is I think there is a feeling that people have that giving the benefit of the doubt is inherently a good thing, and you should always give the benefit of the doubt. Anyone who's learned that mission in Avos of and knows the actual what Chazal say on it would know what Rabbeinu Yonah is saying, which is that if rov ma'aseim are good, then you are chayav to be down l'kaf zechus. If it is an Adam who's like unknown, then it's midas chasidus to judge l'kaf zechus. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is it. And then if the rov ma'aseim are bad, then even when they do something good, you should be suspicious and think that they have an ulterior motive.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says that you should always be, when you see a Rasha doing something good, you shouldn't say, oh, maybe they're like doing something good or doing good. You should say, like, you should always judge them with gospel.
Yeah, correct. Right. So what's interesting here is according to Rabbeinu Yonah, who's the audience of the pasuk.
The general populace.
Yeah, I think so, right? It's not the Tzadik. The Tzadik is doing this anyway, right? So what does the general populace need to know this for?
Well, I think there's like, I think at least for the first half, the onlooker can be like, oh, the Tzadik is getting duped, but I see what's going on, and so like, maybe I'm gonna act based on that,
Right. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I gotta tell this funny story. This is not a story of a Rasha, but this is in that book, the 70 Conversations in Transit. With the Rav, and so the book is written by Rav Aaron Adler, who was the Rav's chauffeur in his youth for a lot. The chauffeur was in his youth, not the Rav, and I think he had to take him from LaGuardia Airport to YU, whenever the Rav came in for I forgot how many years, So he said that he would always drive in the slow lane. In order to squeeze out an extra 5 minutes of conversation with the Rav. So he said that years later, after the Rav had died, then he was talking to the Rav's daughter, I think Dr. Tova Lichtenstein, I think that's the Rav's daughter. And she said, you and I both are aware that my father was a very smart man and he knew exactly what you were doing, but he didn't he didn't object, but like that's obviously not the same case here. But like I do think I think the phenomenon I was saying and the phenomenon that Rabbeinu Yonah is talking about here is like I think there is some like tendency, I think, for people to project onto the tzaddik a certain purity which would preclude knowledge of evil and scheming and like seeing beneath the surface, and again, that's just not our tzaddikim. Our tzaddikim are not saints. Our tzaddikim are people who have like gained knowledge of themselves, and kol gadol mechaveru yitzro gadol mimeno, like they are in tune with their yetzer hara, and like they've worked through certain areas, so they do know stuff that you can't just like pull the wool over their eyes. And if you see the tzaddik, and think that he's blind to something, I mean, obviously you should do what's rational and like bring it to his attention if that's warranted, but like don't just assume that he's not aware of what's going on. Yeah.
I think there's also to think, if you're just like a regular guy as a bystander, if you see a tzaddik looking badly at someone, you may then think badly that
right.
In that,
that's a good point.
If you don't know this concept of someone's usually doing bad.
Yeah, that's a very good point, right? Is that that's another, hold on just 1 second here. That's another example from that book in the Rav Have I gotten across the point that you should read this book? Yeah, that he said that the Jews, when there was an election between Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter. So Jimmy Carter was the Democratic candidate and Gerald Ford was Republican, and many Jews were voting for Carter because he was a Democrat, and also I forgot what other reasons there were. I forgot what the reasons were, but what?
Nixon?
I don't think he said that had to do with Nixon. I don't know, but he said that the Rav voted for Ford because he said that Ford was a avowedly non-religious man and Jimmy Carter was a very religious man. And he said that like, I don't trust a religious man doing what's in the best interest for the Jews, like a Christian religious, obviously, but he was Baptist, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't exactly remember, but anyway, so like that's an example where you could see a person doing that and being like, oh, like how could he like assume that like this person who's like so good for so many other areas is like, how can he like posit that he's going to do something bad? But like that's the tzaddik will have a finer tuned sense of the psyche of rishus and maybe be able to see a couple steps ahead of the average person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like this feeling that like a tzaddik is like always going to be nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that has to do with that purity thing, or it's interesting. So I think there's a larger point here, which is that your projection of what a tzaddik is not necessarily in line with what a tzaddik actually is, and you should actually, part of becoming a tzaddik is learning what a tzaddik actually is, and that's another way that this actually helps the average member of the populace, that on their developmental path towards the tzaddik, not just in terms of how they view the tzaddik or interact with him. Okay, Meiri. All right. Who maskil tzaddik leves Rasha misal v'rashayim l'ra. Oh, by the way, I just want to point out in Rabbeinu Yonah, he is translating misal v'rashayim l'ra as in his mind he inclines the Rasha to evil, meaning like he judges him towards evil, as doing evil. Okay. Who nikshar ima shalamala mimenu. This is connected to the previous pasuk. What was the previous pasuk? Not in this packet is what it's not. Anyone remember? 21:10.
The weights.
Oh, was it the lates? Yeah. Nefesh Rasha. Oh, sorry, 11. Thank you. 21:11. Ba'anash lates yachan pesi uvahaskil lachacham yikachdas. When the lates is punished, the simpleton will become wise. Uvahaskil, right. Someone pointed that out also. The haskil, haskil might be a connection. We didn't pursue that yesterday. Uvahaskil lachacham yikachdas. So we translated that there as when the chacham receives instruction, then he takes knowledge. He seizes knowledge. Okay, so Meiri says, he contemplates the ultimate end of the Rasha. That's maskil tzaddik lebeis Rasha. Okay. Umasalef rashayim lara. Ratzalomar. By the way, you notice Rabbeinu Yonah didn't really care about base Rasha. He didn't bother to explain that unless he's going to say broadly it's like the nature of the Rasha, but he's not like lav tavka base Rasha. Looks like the Meiri is going in that direction, but we'll see. Masalef rashayim lara. Ratzalomar shebamachashavto v'sichlo. Humachzikam kima'avsim ukenotim lara, meaning to say that with his thought and his intelligence, he strengthens machzikam, he strengthens them, or he presumes their status as distorters and those who are inclined to evil. To harm, right? Inclined to destruction. I assume it means their destruction, not that they destroy others. Umasalef hu k'inyan petiti es hanavi. I have led astray the navi. Rotzalomar shehemadativ b'chezkas mifuta. Meaning I've regarded him as someone who was seduced. Klomar shepirsamti inyano. I have publicized his character. I don't know what's going on here. That God mocks mockers. I don't know what he's saying. let's just try to figure this out here. I think he's
saying that the Rasha is has the character of Metzudas.
I think he's just bringing the Mafuta thing for the grammar, though.
Yeah, I think he's saying that's what Masalik means.
That he has the character of being, but not of being Mafuta, though.
Of being, I think.
Of being what?
Of being Masalik.
Of being Masal. Yeah, okay, right.
I think he's saying this like being Mafuta, which is like leading astray.
I don't think so. Yeah, what were you saying, Yaakov?
Yeah, it seems like he's saying it's the chazaka.
Yeah, but not of being Mafuta.
Yeah,
Mafuta is just the grammatical model of Misalef.
Oh, okay.
And same thing like who yelits. It doesn't mean that, meaning lalitim who, yeah. I'm not sure what he means. Give me 1 second. Because I think there's another clue. Klomar shepirsamti inyano. It might mean like to present them as such, to present them as being like that they're destined for destruction. I don't know. So, but and also, how's this connected with the previous one? Haskell. Oh, do you think it means that when he because the last pasuk was about teaching and disciplining. So do you think it means that the tzaddik will, because the tzaddik understands that the end of the Rasha is for destruction, then he'll present the Rasha as being, like careening towards destruction?
So I would say
that to the Pesi?
Yeah, to the Pesi or to the Chacham.
So I would say with his machshava and his seichel.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
That may means with his machshava and seichel, he figures out how
to present them
in a situation that you see with the Rasha today, even though he's successful, he's going to be destined for failure.
Interesting. So let's since you gave me a matir, let's go to Shadal, okay? Because Shadal says something like that, and either we'll get an idea from Shadal, or we will, and either it'll just be an idea there, or it'll help us with the Rabbeinu Yonah, Meiri. I mean, okay. Shadal is not in your packet. Sorry. Maskil Tzadik v'gomer. Hatzadik enenu nifte b'ra'osel hatzlachas Rasha. The Tzadik is not seduced when he sees the success of the Rasha. Avalhu misbonin al beso v'ashro v'chvodo. He understands his household and his, I guess, estate would probably be a better, or whatever his, whatever. His household, his wealth, and his kavod. Who goes there al rishayim hasilov, and he, I don't think he means he decrees like let it be. I think he means like he concludes about the rishayim silov hafchav hamapala. I think I'm reading that wrong. Mahapecha. Yeah. That they're going to be siluf here does not mean corrupt. It means to be overturned and like cast down. Machmas hara shehim osim, because of the evil that they do. And Masalif is al derech v'timu hakohen. in the manner of the pasuk that the Kohen was matame. Oh, Yomar Shu Tame. I think that's what the Meiri is saying, meaning he declares him as Tame. It doesn't mean that the Kohen makes him Tame. It means he declares him as Tame. So Misalef does not mean he corrupts the Rasha. It means he declares him as corrupt. That's what the Meiri meant. Oh, good. Thanks, Shadal. Afkan Tzadik Omer Shaharashaim Miutadim Laselep Ulamaflaga. Even here, so to here, the Tzadik states that the Rasha is destined for corruption and for overturning and for downfall. And Shadal said this on the 23rd of Cheshvan in the year Taf Reish Chaf Daled. Yeah, I was wondering why it says that, and I still wonder, but it is an interesting thing in Shadal's commentary. He will state when he said certain ideas, and he'll often recant or renounce things, or he'll quote his former pshat, and then he'll say, I hereby renounce the pshat I gave on the 23rd of Mar Cheshvan, such and such. And so it's, it is, I mean, I wish, we have to like archaeologize that out of the Rambam's manuscripts about like when he made his changes and stuff, but like, nowadays we have like, like in Wikipedia, if you edit something, you look at the, when it was edited, timestamp, that's the word I'm looking for. So Shadal timestamps his own Pirish. Yeah. So even though Shadal doesn't connect it to the previous pasuk, going back to the Meiri, I do think that you can, since the Meiri connects it, I think you can say that this is educationally, that the tzaddikim will, in part of their disciplinary efforts to help the Pesi and even the Chacham, they will present the Rasha as being destined for destruction and corruption. And that could be a, how Chazal will make a big deal, like they'll hyperbolize the evil actions of characters that are only ambiguously bad in Tanakh, that might be for a similar motive. Like, for the Pesi who can really only see things in black and white terms, then you don't want to present the Rasha in subtle ways. You want to exaggerate their flaws and their consequences, and then later on you could develop subtlety. Once you understand like the mentality of the Rasha.
And you say like a Mordechai is going to see it.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That's why the Megillas Esther and the way that, especially the way Chazal presented, not Reggio, is really, really good educationally, because it really just highlights the Darhei Chaim for the Tzadik and the Rasha and the Kasil and whoever the other person is, whoever you want to assign the parts to. Yeah. Okay. Let's do the Meiri's. Is that clear here? Okay. And I think this, I'm not projecting the Shadal into this. I think this is what the Meiri is saying. I just don't understand his precise grammatical things. Like, I think, again, Petiti es Hanavi, Shehemadati b'chesas mefuteh, I presented him, or I publicly said about him that he was a mefuteh, Okay, derech nistar in the Meiri, Amar shehayelad hamiskin mischakim hisgaber al beis hazaken ubnei chelo umakalkel machshavosam. Have we had the Yeled Miskin talk yet? Okay, not here. Okay, so the Meiri, in explaining the derech nistar, uses a mashal from Shlomo Melech in Koheles, Yeled Miskin, and he will often state the derech nistar in these terms. Okay, so he says, Tov Yeled Miskin v'chacham melech zachen u'ksil asher lo yada lihizaher od. Better a poor and wise youth than a old and foolish king who no longer knows how to guard himself. Kimi beis hasurim yatza limloch. He emerged from the prison, I guess, to rule. Ki gamba malchuso nolad rash. For even in his kingship, he was born poor. So I think Rashi brings down Chazal there. Yeah, Rashi says, Tov Yeled Miskin v'chacham ze Yetzer Tov. That's the Yetzer Tov. Lama nikra Yeled. Why is he called Yeled? She'eno ba'adam ad yoga moshana. Because he only enters a person when he's 13. Right. So your Yetzer Tov is your seichel, and your seichel really only comes online as a force, as a Yetzer Tov when you are when you're bar mitzvah or roundabouts. And then miskin, why is he poor? She'ein ha'evarim shomin lo kamo le'yetzer hara. The limbs, meaning the body, doesn't obey the Yetzer Tov as it does the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Hara got a good 13-year head start. Chacham shemaski as adam b'derech tova. It makes a person intelligent in terms of the way of the good path. And mimelech zakin uksil, then an old and foolish king. Yetzer hara, that's the Yetzer hara, who shalit al kol ha'ivarim. That it's a king because it rules over all the limbs. But zakin mishash nolad havlad hu nasun bo. That from the time that he is born, then it's placed in him, which was the pshat of Marcus Aurelius. If you hold that Antoninus is Marcus Aurelius, right? Shneimar, as it says, LaPesach Chatas Rov. It's a machlokas about whether the Yitzhar is in the womb or when it's born. I think Marcus Aurelius or Antoninus is the one who says when it's born. Uksio shemat ehu l'derech ra. He's a fool because he inclines him on the bad path. Kinhu nidrash b'midrash. That's how the midrash interprets it. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So the Meiri will often use the term. Our footnote helps here. Okay. Fine. Let's see. Amar shayelad miskin, the poor young lads. That's the Yetzer Tov. Mischakim will be strategic. He's gaber to overpower and to rule over. Overpower is better. The base hazakin, the house of the Yetzer hara. Okay, I think I mentioned this yesterday that the house is the body, right? In this mashal. So I think that's what it means. The zakin is the Yetzer hara, and the zakin is a melech of that bias, meaning of the house. Ubnei chelo, and the people of his age. Okay, so let's see here. So he says, the footnote helps us. Hayeled hayitzer tov. Yeled is the Yetzer tov. Hazakin hayitzer hara, and that's from Koheles. Ubnei chelo is kokozakuf, is the bodily faculties, right? Sense, imagination, all that good stuff. Umakalko machshvoseim, and it will spoil his plans, their plans, the plans of the household members of the Yetzer hara, right? In other words, Yetzer hara has mobilized all the forces of the body. And the Chacham has to like outsmart them. This is what we call a hack, right? You have to like hack your psyche or hack your brain and like trick it into operating in line with your seichel, through using like psychological devices. And he says, "Bavur hara v'ha'ivus shu margish bem," on account of the ra and the perversion that he senses in them. So in other words, so what is this saying here? First of all, how is he reading it? So he's saying maskil Tzadik base Rasha. So the Tzelem Elokim has to be maskil about in regards to the body that's controlled by the evil, the Yetzer hara, and he has to misalif Rashaim Lara. He's not explaining that directly, right? I mean, he says makalkel makshvoseim, right? He has to like thwart their plans for evil. I think is how he's saying it, right? Yeah.
The note says the Lara is
Bavur hara. Right. That's interesting. Yeah. I that is definitely how the Meiri is learning it. I like my job better. That they're machshvose. No, I like his job better. Right. Meaning because of the ra that he senses. So in other words, like this is this it's an interesting thing. Like there is a phenomenon of outsmarting your own psyche and tricking yourself into doing things. Knowing that you are prone to a certain psychological trap, and then like you would think it's not possible to knowingly trick yourself into avoiding that trap, but you can do it. Like you're very trickable, and like I was talking with a student about like she was having a hard time getting started on her homework, and I said that I used to, I might have given this example in Mishlei before, but like I used to have I used to get home from teaching, 7 periods in high school and then have a little break and then have to like prepare all my classes for the next day, And so I would have a lot of resistance to getting started and just like plunging into this whole like hours long thing of like preparation. So what I would do is I used to have like these little like routines I would do in my classes of like making a vocab word of the day or making like a philosophical quotation of the day. So I would trick myself. I would say, okay, I'm not going to actually start preparing for class. I'm just going to find a vocab word that I'm going to present to my students, and I would look through and then I would like make a PowerPoint slide and I'd be, okay, now I'll find this philosophical quote and I'll think like what the example is. And by the time I got involved in doing that, I would have tricked myself into getting into work mode. And then I would have overcome that initial hump of resistance, and there are lots of like these little tricks that you can do to the whole tiny habits and atomic habits is that whole method, is predicated on that method. So I think that's the kind of thing that he means is like, the king, the Melech Zakin has a huge hold on his household. So you have to be equally like wily in your tricks. Okay, so let's just review. we have the Metzudas David, who basically says that this pasuk is for a tzaddik who's in the house of a Rasha, who is bringing success to the house of the Rasha, and the tzaddik needs to be aware that that is going to be perceived by the Rasha as on account of his rishus. So the tzaddik needs to take that into account and take whatever precautions are necessary to either mitigate that or whatever, prevent the Rasha from being emboldened in that way. Rabbeinu Yonah is saying that this is aimed at the general populace who thinks that the tzaddik doesn't know the human psyche and is always just judging everyone favorably. And he's saying, no, that's not the case. To the contrary, he really has a greater knowledge of the psyche and judges Rishayim L'kaf Chova because he knows that that's a higher probability. And then you have the Meiri's first shot, which is that he educationally, this is also aimed at the tzaddik, he will present the Rishayim in a way that highlights the fact that they're destined for destruction in order to help out the Pesti and the Chacham. And then the derech nistar is in terms of your own inner malchus, that you have to outsmart your own kochos nefesh, your own psychological forces, to get them to obey the, they don't want to obey the Yeled Miskin in Kohel's terms. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Bye, Isaac.